Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this the Wye Valley Aonb Joint Advisory Committee on today, the 1st of November 2021, held remotely, and I welcome you all to this meeting and hope that you'll take part and be interested in every item on the agenda as and when. Thank you. First of all, Richard, can I call to you for any apologies? Thank you.
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Matt Feekins, Adam Taylor, Councillor Tom Forrester, David Price, Ben Nash, Councillor Durkin and Martin Quine. Thank you.
Are there at this stage any declarations of interest, or shall we deal with them as and when if they occur? As and when. Thank you. I think that's a nod. I would like to welcome Councillor Anthony Clay from St Albans Community Council, who has joined us as a guest this afternoon. Welcome, Anthony. Really pleased to see you here. Thank you. If we can move on then, please, Andrew, to the public question time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a bit like buses, really. We don't have any public questions for months, if not years, and then two of them come along at once. So I'll deal with the first one, which was sent out with the agenda, and just say the public question time is at the discretion of the chair. We do have sort of a procedure which I will circulate with the at the next meeting, but the general procedure is that the public questions are at the discretion of the chair, and we can allow people to speak, although neither of the two people putting forward the items wanted to speak. They felt their papers were self-explanatory, and the usual process is that we don't get into extensive sort of debate or discussion around the items, but usually they'd be referred to sort of back to officers to come back with a written response, normally at the next meeting. So the first one we have is from a group based in to the east of the Aonb. So I'm just trying to find the papers. The Preservation of Rural Beauty Group, identifying the proposal to extend the Aonb eastwards, really from to take in the Forest of Dean and up through Herefordshire, through sort of Gorsley, Dimmock, Muchmarkle, and Puckley area, up to join up with the Woolhope Dome. And it's interesting because this is an area that was part of the original proposed Wye Valley and Forest of Dean Aonb, proposed in the 1940s and 1950s. I have actually got the sort of Bible, as it were, which is the designation history of the Aonb, which has all the maps of the, most of you won't be able to see this at all, but the map areas. And so I'm certainly happy to do a report on this for the next meeting, but it's also important for members to understand that it is actually for Natural England as the government agency to identify, nominate and propose Aonbs in discussion with the local authorities. And the obviously the purpose of this committee is to is to focus on the conservation and enhancement of the natural beauty of the Aonb, and we're not mandated at all to extend the Aonb. But as I said, I'm perfectly happy to come back with a response to this paper, having discussed it with officers through the Technical Officers Working Party for the next meeting, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Can I bring in you, Chris McFarlane, please, and then Yolande. Thank you, Chris.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew, for fleshing out the detail. I sort of half think that this is passing the buck, and I understand why you're saying that. We should focus on the existing Aonb, but they ask for a response. They ask for whether we might, in principle, be in agreement or would want an extension to occur. The natural heritage of the area that they're in question is quite high, and I know from my efforts to have the whole area designated as a biosphere reserve that the north part of the district of the Forest of Dean, you know, the Dimmock Woods and the area extending into Hereford is actually quite valuable. And I know that with a background of the diminution of nature, the extinction of species, we're in a mass extinction, and the ecological crisis, which is interlinked with the climate crisis, as we all know, it might be worthwhile. We are the Joint Advisory Council. I wonder whether we can say something other than, well, it's for the Natural England and the authorities to respond. It's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yolande.
Yes, thanks. I need to also declare that I actually asked this group to submit their proposal to the Wye Valley Aonb Joint Advisory Committee, and I'm very grateful to Councillor McFarlane to actually raise that, because I agree. I think that it's worth having a conversation and giving a response. I understand our parameters as an advisory committee, but that's what we're doing. You know, we're going to be advising the office what we would like to see. For me, I would like to understand also about our responsibilities about either feeding back to this group to ask if they have also submitted to Natural England, but also could we also, if we decide to say, yes, it's a good idea, and we like this proposal, or we give it to next meeting to flesh it out further, but we could then write a letter of support to Natural England to support this group. The other thing I should let you know is that I have shared this proposal with the cabinet member for infrastructure. That's John Harrington, because he is also in conversations with around, you know, expanding the Aonb and, you know, around national park status. So.
Thank you, Yolande. Thank you. Richard Gessin, thank you.
Thanks very much, Jim. Yeah, just 2 points I'd like to make. First of all, I would welcome Andrew's comments on this so we could look at it at the next meeting, because obviously any extension of the Aonb is going to have a direct effect on staffing, for example. The second point I'd like to make, having read the item, it would see that one of the, if you like, one of the major concerns is development. And I think we need time to look at that in view of the way that Andrew is going to present a report to us at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Colin?
Could I have a word?
Yes, you can. Actually, I'll bring you in after Colin Evers has spoken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just first of all, I mean, I've been involved in trying to get the Forest of Dean in Aonb for the last 18 years, and Gloucester Association of Parish and Town Councils has supported the move to get the Forest of Dean into an Aonb for at least 12 years that I'm aware of. That said, I mean, the proposal for the Forest of Dean was to include the land, which was essentially the Leaden Valley land, which would have brought in part of the area which is being talked about now in this proposal. A point to Andrew, please. Are they actually, I could not myself determine whether they thought the Forest of Dean should be in the extension or whether it should be excluded from the extension because they felt it was already protected somehow or other by the fact that we had the 1938 Act pertaining to the statutory forest area. So I was a bit at a loss to understand really what their motive was, other than obviously, as already been said, they appear to be concerned about development in their area that they're talking about. So can you throw any light on that, please?
And shall I come back after
Andrew?
Ashley's? Yeah.
Andrew?
Well, shall I come back at the end because there's a couple of points
Yes, of course. We'll ask Ashley to say a few words now, please. Ashley, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I think that what Andrew suggested is what we should do. We can still pass it on, but at the same time talk about it at greater length, perhaps next time, when we can have the actual maps showing the areas involved, and also discuss some of the implications. We can't. We'll be careful about discussing it all now because we haven't. We need some more information in terms of how this would possibly impact on our existing arrangements. How would it? Would it in fact? And would it in fact include the Forest of Dean as well? Because that has been going on for some years as well. But as a body, we, as Andrew said, we're not actually we're here to advise the authority on what we need to do with what we have now. And there's always been a little bit of anxiety about launching into other things when we've got plenty to do, if you like, already. And the other one issue is how that would impact on the Welsh part of the Aonb as well, whether that would make things more difficult by introducing quite a big area on top of what we have already on the English side. That's not to say that I'm against it at all, but there are issues around it all. So I think we should do as if we're going to discuss it next time, we need to have some more information in any case, and then in the meantime, the organisation themselves could pass it on to the body that's responsible for dealing with this, and then we can make a comment if it's afterwards to them as well, if that is okay with the local authorities involved in our Aonb.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. Can I bring in David Wheeler now, please, David?
Ashley said most of what I wanted to say, specifically regarding exactly what is being proposed in terms of a map and a boundary. And the problem, of course, is the throwing about of the term Forest of Dean, when that might apply to A, the district council, or B, the statutory Forest of Dean, and it's quite difficult to hold conversations without being very specific about what you're talking about. My interpretation of the paper I read was that they were wanting to bring in those areas of the Leaden Valley, let's for want of a better word, call it the Newent area. If it included the whole of the Forest of Dean, statutory forest, and the Newent area, as chairman of the Forest of Dean District Council Planning Committee, I would be scratching my head thinking, where are we actually going to have any development at all in the Forest of Dean, given the government's housing targets that we're trying to meet in our emerging local plan? There is one thing I would say, and that's not to denigrate the aims of this group. If everywhere is an Aonb, nowhere is protected, because then everywhere is equal.
Thank you. Well made. Thank you, David. Hello, Rita. I think you wanted to speak.
Yes, just
welcome.
Thank you very much. Please don't think I'm precocious, but we only have these meetings 3 times a year. This is obviously a very important topic. And, you know, I agree with what Ashley said about getting more information, but would it be a suggestion to have a working party on this as soon as possible to discuss the information that's gathered, so that whatever is brought before the next meeting is actually known to more people and to over by people?
Before I bring you in, Andrew, I'm going to go back again to Chris. Chris McFarlane, please.
Thank you. Could we invite the authors of this report to the next meeting and keep our fingers absolutely crossed that it's a normal meeting face to face when we can look at maps and discuss the finer points of the proposal all together in the same room?
My points, exactly. I think the initiators of both these questions should be here before us, which would be really helpful. Thank you. Rita, you wanted to come back again?
Oh, sorry, I'm going to, I haven't put myself down. But,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Andrew, please.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I mean, I think everyone is right. It would be great to see a boundary. I mean, I noticed in the first paragraph, the proponents say we leave the precise boundary to be determined officially, which is quite right in a sense. Again, it would be for the local authorities really to draw up that boundary in discussion with Natural England based on the natural beauty criteria, not on housing development pressure or anything else. But you know, similarly, as David pointed out, Councillor Wheeler pointed out, the drawing the boundary of definition to the Forest of Dean Aonb was not a task I've ever wanted to take on myself. The other thing is as we reported at the last meeting, the government are due to give a response on the Glover review later this year, and part of that was to present with Natural England a revised designation strategy for Aonbs, but also in June they announced that they were going to designate 2 new Aonbs and 2 new Aonb reviews or designation boundary reviews, which under current programme takes Natural England about 5 years to complete a boundary review. So that's on current timescales a 20-year programme of work that Natural England have on boundary reviews. If they speed up that process, then it might take, let's say, give a conservative guess of 2 or 3 years, so 2.5 years, let's say, per review. So that means it's a 10-year process they've got now. This is a completely new, outside of the Forest of Dean, a completely new proposal, which presumably goes at the bottom of the list. And there was a list of at least 10, I think 10 or 12 Aonb designations in the Glover review, so which did include the Forest of Dean on that list, and a Marches Aonb looking at Western Herefordshire. So with all due respect to members, I don't see this as a immediate priority. I'm certainly willing and able to put a report together for next JAC, and I think that's quite right and proper that members have the opportunity to discuss this in the full context of the information and the legislation available. But I think we need to understand where this fits in the priority order for Natural England and for government, as well as for the local authorities and for drawing a boundary. But I would come back to the fact that this very closely aligns to the original designation as proposed in the Hobhouse report in the 1940s. So as with the Forest of Dean, it is unfinished business, but where that sits in the priorities, well, certainly not for me to determine, but have to be aware of the existing list of priorities for government and their agents. So, as I said, Chair, I'm very happy to do a report for the next meeting and allow further discussion and a determination of the committee then.
Okay, thank you. Useful discussion on this item. I think that probably we need to follow the guidelines, and it should go to the Technical Officers Working Group and then back to the next JAC in March. But is anybody prepared to make a proposal, please, in order that we can get this recorded, a vote recorded? Thank you. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I'm willing to propose that on the basis that we also invite the authors of the report to that meeting in March.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Yolande. Everybody in favour, or if there's anybody against, can they shout? I think most of you are in favour with that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Right, if we can move on to the next item, which is to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting, which was in July.
Sorry, Chair, we do have the other submission from Councillor Tom.
Oh, sorry, yes. Yeah.
Forrester on.
Yeah.
Just trying to.
Are we sorted?
I
don't know what I can do.
On the
only
yes.
thing I could do is get you to go to the post office and get money, but that's the only thing I can do.
Sorry, David, could you mute yourself? On the questions relating to the Aonb management plan and the sections on natural capital ecosystem services, and there are three questions, the first one in three parts, asking whether members of the Joint Advisory Committee are aware of the natural capital model. Do committee members responsible view the privatisation by proxy as in any way related to the obligations of the Aonb's Declaration on Climate Change, and do committee members responsible consider that there's been adequate public consultation on the implications of such a policy? Again, I would propose we do a report for the next committee addressing those items so that members have full time to consider and debate them.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor McFarlane, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. I was going to propose that as well. The sadness is that the commons are being privatised, and Tom Forrester has a lot of what he says has more than a grain of truth in it. When I put the opportunity to designate the Forest of Dean as a biosphere reserve to the Office for National Statistics, they used all the market derivatives and commodities to actually prove a point that it was in the economic interests of everyone to in fact designate it as a biosphere reserve because of the ecosystem services that were being provided and protected, and that wildlife as well had a value put on it. It's just the way that we are in this world, this crazy world where we economize everything, and the natural world has a price on its head, and large corporations are trading and have stocks and shares in them, and they are doing that almost under our feet as we know it. I look forward to a comprehensive answer to Tom Forrester's questions. He's also said it to the Forester Dean District Council, and likewise I supported him in principle in that he's quite correct, even though we don't really want to hear it. But thank you. Thank you, Chris. An early invitation for Tom to come to the next meeting, I think that would be good too. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. He's quite radical, quite a firebrand. Councillor anyway, Wheeler. He's a Forester. Sorry.
Yes, I endorse Chris's comments there. The only thing that does slightly concern me, we're now adding 2 fairly massive papers and therefore debates onto the next meeting, and we are getting ourselves away from the core business of the Aonb Joint Advisory Committee. I don't have an objection to that. That's fine. They are extremely important issues. One that is talking about expanding the area. 2 is quite a major policy area. We've already said somebody has already said we only meet once every 3 months or 3 times a year. If we start going into these sorts of areas, we need to meet more frequently.
Andrew.
Yes, I hope we don't need to meet more frequently, or I'll have to write the reports more frequently as well. These are serious issues. They need proper debate, and I'm perfectly happy again to put the as largely author of the management plan to explain what I see as its role and the role of natural capital within that. I wouldn't dispute that there are serious concerns in some quarters about natural capital as a model. I'm not quite sure how we can be seen to be privatizing by stealth the Aonb when about 75% of it is already in private hands, and also natural capital as a concept is not a government policy of the Welsh Government at all. It's not mentioned in any policy documents in Wales. It's not a concept that is adopted by Welsh Government. In fact, they're talking about increasing public ownership of land and woodland. So for 1/3 of the Aonb, the whole concept of natural capital is not relevant, and it's focused on sustainable management and natural resources and other sort of terminology. So yeah, it's for, I don't want, well, I hope we can avoid the philosophical or ideological debate about whether natural capital is a good thing or a bad thing, because that is rehearsed in other forum. But I think we certainly need to look at what its role is in the management plan, and I would share some people's concerns with it as a concept, but it is a government policy in England at least. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Andrew. Yolande.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I support Andrew's view on that. Actually, interestingly enough, I have met with the Duchy of Cornwall because they actually do measure natural capital, and it's very data heavy, but I'll leave that conversation for when we are going to talk about it. I think what it does do, and for me as a new member to this forum, and I hope you'll forgive me, it does offer us an opportunity to look at how we measure the effectiveness of the Aonb management plan, and how, what measures we do use. You know, when we were just talking earlier about planning, well, I'm seeing planning appeals being turned, you know, overturning council decisions, and and because the Aonb management plans aren't statutory plans that they can be noted, but the Aonb office isn't a statutory consultee. You know, there's but I think it does, for me, raise an interesting question about how do we measure you know, the actual effectiveness of the management plan when we're looking at our natural resources. I'm just throwing it in there, but yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I'm not sure, Chris, but did you actually make a proposal when you were speaking a little while back?
Yes, I did sort of go with Andrew's proposal that he brings back a response to that, but I think he's right in that this is not the forum for debating those ideological and philosophical questions, although they do need to be debated somewhere. So I think on this occasion, seeing as we've already got one which is more closely aligned with our the need for our guidance and consultation, let's just try and do your best to answer Tom Forrester's letter, his public questions, and leave it at that, and wait and see if he comes back to you. In my experience, he doesn't come back once you've given an answer, but he may come back in another year or so. But
okay.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Can I put a seconder for that proposal, please? I see that Colin and Yolande want to speak. Yolande, did you want to second that proposal? You're muted.
Sorry, it's an old hand, but I'm happy to second it, but it's like me being repeating the previous motion. So if there could be a different seconder, that would be great.
Thank you. Colin.
Well, I was going to second it, actually, but I agree with what Chris has just been saying. What worries me in what we've received is he states certain things as being fact, but in fact they are actually opinion in many respects. So it always makes me wary of people who do that. But never mind, that's my only personal opinion. But yeah, let's go along with what Chris says and take it from there.
Thank you. Is anybody not in favour of that proposal? If you could please indicate now. I think you're all content.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. We move on to item 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have a proposal? Do you want me to take them page by page? And there may be some alterations, so I will do that. Page 1, which is actually page 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Colin, is that an old hand, or do you wish to speak? You're muted.
Apology.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Fine.
Can I have a proposal that those minutes are a correct record of the last meeting, please?
I think, yes, I couldn't attend the meeting last time at the last minute, so could you put my apology in as well?
Yes, will do. So Richard has said they're a correct record. Can I have a seconder for that, please? And you're all in favour?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on then, Andrew, to the Aonb annual report 2021. Thank you for all the work that's been put into this by both you and other officers. Thank you. If you'd like to talk on this, and if there's any comments, please raise your hands. Thank you.
Yes, this is the delayed annual report for last financial year, and we do it in the extended tabulated form, which is based on reporting on the work programme. So it's a bit of a sort of drawn out process going through it, but so I won't go through it in any detail, but just present it there. We obviously included as much sort of facts and figures as we can in the bullet points. In the right hand column, the outcomes column, and the left hand column relates to the WV dash figures are the policies or strategic objectives from the management plan, so it's where it relates back to the management plan. And then the sort of the middle column is the items out of the work programme, so it's sort of measuring against that in a simplistic term. Obviously last year was severely impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, although we were actually able to take on a huge amount of work still, with most of the team working from home most of the time. And we also adopted through the Sustainable Landscapes, Sustainable Places programme from Welsh Government, a fairly major new funding scheme, which has been helping decarbonise and refurbish the Aonb office for as one of the main outputs of that. So I realised in the figures I presented to the July, the last meeting, I did a brief summary on outputs, and I realised that I hadn't actually included the Sustainable Landscapes, Sustainable Places funding in that, which means we have actually increased our leverage quite significantly. I think we reported £12 for every £1 of local authority contribution in July. Actually, it's £16 for, or over £16 for every local authority pound. So yes, very pleased with that leverage on behalf of the local authorities. So yes, there have been a number of projects we've been progressing, particularly on invasive non-native species, so Japanese knotweed, Himalayan balsam and American skunk cabbage, and the Wye Valley Villages study, which we'll be coming on to later on, and of course the River Festival going online, and now handed on to a CIC. So yeah, I won't dwell any more on that, but happy to answer any questions now or at any other time. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew. Firstly, we have Chris and then David. Thank you. Chris McFarlane, Councillor McFarlane. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's an observation, really, that for every £1 of local authority contribution, you're levering in £16. That is an amazing effort. That really should be promoted to the powers that be, to show that we are value for money, we are effective in the work that we do here, and ask for more. Make sure that I don't know if that's the average for AONBs around the country, but that really does show how much the funding bodies value the natural resources that we're protecting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Thank you for making it. David.
Thank you, Chair. That was a nice general point. I wanted to make a more specific point to Andrew, and I want to make it absolutely clear this is not a criticism, it's a sort of observation and would he like to comment, which is it's on page 18 of the report, Planning, Development, Control and Strategic Policy. And the strategic objective is that the Aonb office will comment on relevant planning applications and strategic planning documents. And then on the other side, in the outcomes, it says there were 602 planning applications received, and then lower down, we provided comments on 3 of them. Now, Andrew, I just wondered if you would like to comment on that, because that seems obviously an incredibly small number. It's less than 1%. It's less than 0.5%. But is that how you would aim to do it, or has that been a result of COVID, or is it that you would only make comments on strategic ones? Because quite frequently I get, virtually the whole of my ward is within the Aonb, and I'm chairman of the planning committee, and I often get comments from public, well, what do the Wye Valley Aonb say? And of course, usually the answer is the Wye Valley Aonb say absolutely nothing. And I just wondered if you could make a comment, Andrew.
David, thank you, David. Before you come in, Andrew, can I have Yolande? I know this is something close to your heart as well, Yolande.
Thank you, Chair, and poor Andrew. Yes, it's a good point that the previous speaker has made. And I know that we had a conversation at the last Joint Advisory Committee around planning. Actually, for me, what I'd be really interested in, and I'm really sorry if I've missed it, Andrew, is that what's FAO stand for, and what were the key trends, when you monitored and reviewed the development trends that affect the Aonb. I'd be really interested to hear about those trends, because I don't know if it's because people living in the Aonb, and because my ward is in the Aonb, but there's quite a lot of passion around planning, and I just think that I've noticed these, as I mentioned before, I've had 3 appeal decisions overturned, which has really galvanized quite a few action groups together, and now looking to take a petition, the parliamentary petition. So are you able to feedback on the development trends, please, Andrew?
Andrew.
Okay, yes, certainly. Firstly, just come back to what Councillor McFarlane was saying about the leverage. I mean, yes, I'm not quite sure where we are in the achievements of Aonbs, but nationally, but a lot of Aonbs do bring in a lot of leverage. The National Association for Aonbs does collate the figures nationally, but not with the intention of creating league tables, but with the intention of presenting a combined figure for DEFRA. So I will certainly be able to, when the National Association's annual report comes out, be able to let you know what that annual figure is for all the Aonbs in England and Wales. But yes, we're not exceptional, but we do consistently punch above our weight, I suppose, is how I'd like to put it. Yes, then coming to planning, yes, we always reckoned on average that we comment on about 1% of planning applications. We probably look at 10%. Because, let's say 90 or 75 to 80% of the planning applications aren't of particularly significant, or not going to have particularly significant detrimental impact on the Aonb. So they're the porch extensions and the the rear extensions and that sort of thing. So we do look at all the planning applications in the Aonb, and that's most of the monitoring that we're doing. So we will certainly be able to report back on the types of applications. So yeah, whether they're barn conversions or extensions or new builds and so on and so forth. So I'd be very happy to come back and report on that, and we would be able to look back over the last few years. What we don't have the capacity to do is comment on any more planning applications than we do, and very acutely aware as a individual and as an officer that there are planning applications that slip through my fingers that I just literally don't have the capacity to deal with, and also that there are sometimes planning applications that for some reason I'm not aware of and that slip through the net, and we also don't, what is frustrating in a sense is we don't have the capacity to go back and check whether our comments, how our comments were taken on board, what happened to those planning applications once we made comments. You know, there's the relatively small amount that we do comment on because we think they will have a significant detrimental impact on the Aonb. There are then lots of other comments which, yes, Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Hardwick will know as chair of planning committees that the planning officers or the planning committee determine should be refused on Aonb grounds, and that's through implementing the local authorities' planning policies on Aonb, which I'm very happy to leave for the planning officers to deal with, for them to do their job in a sense. So we don't have the capacity to monitor how effective those Aonb planning policies are, nor how many then get appealed, or you know whether so there is a huge job there. If we had the resources, which would be very worthwhile doing, of actually measuring how effective the Aonb as a designation, so the policies and the implementation of those policies, right through from the planning inspectorate down to the parish council, how effective the Aonb is in protecting the area, and yeah, I have to confess that is an unknown entity, because I don't think anyone is doing that around not around here for our Aonb, and it would be a job worth doing, but it would be probably pretty much full-time job for someone. So if I had the resources, I would happily put that into doing that. But yes, unfortunately at the moment we don't have the resources for that.
Thank you, Andrew. Chris Barron. Are you there, Chris? I thought you were indicated to speak.
No, it's right. No, it's fine. Sorry, Anna. Too many buttons to press. I was just going to add to this is that both the Wye Valley Society and the local branch of CPRE do try and track planning applications within the Aonb and even adjacent to it. And wherever we see something that might be considered a little dubious in terms of the particular regime within the Aonb, we do try and comment in a positive way. And equally, we do try and track where that goes. So I would say, you know, we are doing our best on this, and obviously being voluntary organisations, we can put as much resource into it as our members are prepared to commit. So I would say that quite often when things go to appeal, it's a matter of judgment, and the appeal inspector sometimes has a different view perhaps to both the planning officers and the planning committees. But I think it's rare that I've seen them completely step outside the planning framework.
Thank you, Chris, for those comments. Thank you, Chris. Yes, you can. In just 1 second, I'll call you in, Ashley.
Thank you,
Chris.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. It's thank you, Andrew, for noting that it is an important role that we play as an Aonb to make sure that planning applications do more benefit than harm in general. I do recall that you did a a sort of roadshow where you went to some of the parish, well, as many parish councillors as you could, just explaining to parish councillors who are statutory consultees to implement the principles and the policies and the ethos of protecting areas of natural beauty. And so one would hope that through those organisations, disparate though they might be, you will be reminded or notified if something is coming through which is certainly harmful to the Aonb as we know it. This will be recorded, but I have my experience in the past is that those conditions that are added to a planning application when it's granted permission, many of those amendments or conditions, which include putting up bird boxes and bat boxes and planting trees and maintaining hedgerows and whatever, 90% of those don't actually get implemented, which is rather sad, but that's the way it is, because we like you, we don't have the capacity to monitor the applications once they've been approved and just check that those conditions, where they're being discharged, then yes, we can do, but when they're not, then it's in the lap of the gods, really. And I think it's rather sad that we are missing a point, because every planning application that slips through the net and does more harm than good is deteriorating the integrity of the Aonb. But I don't know where you'd get the funds from, but if I had £1 million, I'd certainly give them to you.
Yolande.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for letting me come back in again. Yeah, I fully support. I think that having a designated planning officer in the Aonb office would be amazing, but it's where would that funding come from? But I do know that John Watkins, the chief executive of the national Aonb office, Landscapes for Life, he was going to actually get his planning group to actually look at planning appeals across the his landscape, and I was just wondering if I could ask you, Andrew, in public to actually raise planning. The inconsistency, I think, applied by the planning inspectorate is particularly worrying, and I think that with one appeal decision that was made in Ross and Wye about 44 affordable houses, actually didn't even consider the local neighbourhood development plan, which is which was really worrying. But I'm happy to talk to you about that in more detail privately. But if you would, as a representative for the Wye Valley Aonb, to actually raise planning, and that inconsistency would be great. I don't know if my colleagues agree, but it would be a proposal I would like to put on the table. Is it okay, Chair?
Thank you, Yolande. Can I bring in Ashley now, please? Ashley.
Yes, I could have gone for ages about this, but I've spent the last 40 odd years making comments on planning applications in various positions. I was on the Monmouthshire County Council Planning Committee for 12 years, and the Community Council, that's your parish councils in England, for over 40 years. And before that, making my own observations. The most important thing, as far as I can see, is that the local authorities who are responsible for planning are also the bodies, the authorities that have to look after the Aonbs. And the planning departments have a duty to look at planning applications from an Aonb angle. And they have to be reminded sometimes about it. My experience locally is that the community councils, generally speaking, are concerned as well, and make observations that we would have made ourselves as a body, as a Aonb body. But it is a bit hit and miss, and there are times when you wonder, had they forgotten that they were responsible for the Aonbs? Having this looked at nationally is about time, I think, as well. So that would be, if I understand correctly, that's happening, and I think that perhaps then more pressure should be on the local authority, not just the planning departments, but other departments that have an impact in terms of planning at one time or another. They too have a duty. That's in the makeup of the whole system of protection of Aonbs. So I think the local authorities sometimes have to be reminded. Highways have to be reminded. So yes, always keep an eye on things, and observations from individual people and the Wye Valley Society, that sort of thing, which is where I started, is one way of doing it. Local people getting together and saying, "Look, this is not on," and making observations. But yeah, you've got to keep abreast of things and do something right. Make observations. Perhaps that's easy, not quite so. It is time consuming, but my experience is it's been quite profitable. Okay.
Thank you, Ashley. Now we're moving on to Colin, who wanted to say something, and then back to Yolanda, I believe. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, speaking from a point of view of both Association Parish and Town Councils, as Chris has already said, all parish councils are statutory consultees on planning applications. That said, though, what we have, shall we say, is a variable quality in how parish councils look at planning applications and how they respond to planning applications. And I think this is particularly important with respect to the Aonb, because I think, I mean, we have various training programs which we invite parish councils to attend on planning, but I think what really perhaps would benefit would be if we could get the Aonb, and I'm looking at you, Andrew, to come along to some of these training courses and stress to them, specifically about Aonbs and protected landscapes in general, because there is a gross lack of understanding about what they can and cannot, what can and cannot be done with respect to planning in those protected landscapes. And that's not just Aonbs, it's also, where you have SSIs, SPAs, etc., etc. So, I think going on from that, I mean, Chris, you mentioned quite rightly the extremely good return on investment we get with the Aonb, the 16 times return. Might it be that what we ought to be looking at with the Aonb team is perhaps not getting quite as much as 16 times, but ploughing a little bit of that money into having some in-house expertise which is being used on a regular basis with respect to those planning applications which are really perhaps contentious within the Wye Valley. Thank you.
You're on mute, Anne.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Colin. Can I bring you in, Richard, please?
Thank you. Yes, just very briefly. About 2 years ago, before COVID, Andrew actually addressed the Hereford Association of Local Councils annual conference and gave a talk on the Aonb and planning applications, and that was very useful. I think a lot of our parish councils in the Aonb actually hopefully noted what he had to say and appreciated the Aonb's input into planning applications in the area. Thank you.
Yolande, I'm not sure if you wanted to come back in or if you made a proposal, but meanwhile, can I just suggest that we did ask, we've been asked to welcome the report, which I'm sure we all do. But did you wish to make a proposal, Yolande, or?
Yes, actually, I was going to also ask is that if Andrew had already done a presentation to parish councils, is that available via the website of the Joint Advisory Committee? Because I think that if he's already done a presentation, it's something that we can refer to for our own parish councils, and something that we could, because rather than you doing it several times, if you've done it once, could that film be available, and therefore we can actually reference it? And yes, my other proposal was just asking for Andrew if it's agreeable with members to bring planning and the inconsistency that is seen around the planning inspectorate, please, to the national AGM, which is forthcoming.
Andrew, over to
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, many points well made. Just dealing with Yolande's last point, yes, I'll certainly bring it up with the National Association. I'll see whether there's a planning subgroup which is made up of the AONBs that are lucky enough to have a planning officer. So that is the resource. The National Association doesn't have any planning staff itself. It draws on the constituent AONB resources. But yes, I'll certainly raise it with them, and I'll see about the opportunity at the AGM as well. Coming back to planning training, we haven't got any sort of resources online at the moment. I mean, obviously, yes, when the presentation that Richard was talking about was in the good old days when I was stood there with a PowerPoint projector in the room. So I've obviously got that presentation. In the past, I think that same year, a couple of times now, Paul Esrich, the AONB manager for the Malvern Hills AONB, and myself have done a joint presentation to Herefordshire Council planning staff. Yeah, we certainly did that a couple of years ago and a couple of years previous to that. So I've got the presentations, but I haven't got the film of me presenting it, as it were. And the other thing is with the rollout of the neighbourhood development plans, I was giving a bespoke document to each neighbourhood development plan sort of group or committee with a breakdown of the legislation for the AONB and how the management plan related to that that parish or that area. And so I think, yes, there's a definite opportunity or need to really take, rather than responding to neighbourhood development plans, is actually just produce a set of material for each town, parish and community council, and just distribute it out with the offer of doing a follow-up talk or something. And yeah, and if we end up being locked down for longer, then I can think about recording a presentation and making that available instead, or as well as. So yeah, there's some things I've definitely taken down and noted to work up in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Chris, would you like to come in now?
Yeah, I'll keep it very short because I know we've been on this an awful long time, but it's a very emotive subject, I know. All I was going to say is I'm sure you're all aware that just keeping track of the changing in planning policy documents is itself almost a full-time task. I mean, the NPPF gets reissued about every 2 years, and every so often, the last one in 2019, and a subtle paragraph is changed, and the consequences are difficult to interpret until you get into it. And tracking local plans as well, because of course all of those are on a 5-year review cycle, is also a major task. So I just say laudable, but I spend too much of my time reading through this lot and then trying to work out what the precise impact might be in relation to where we are within the Aonb and so on. So I just think being realistic about it, almost by the time you've got the briefing ready, it may well already be out of date. But I fully agree that having been on a parish council and so on, it's really hard work if you're there trying to make sense out of a lot of this. And I can't say any more than we keep trying as well. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I'm sure that, as I said before, that we all welcome this report, and if there's somebody that doesn't, well, can you please indicate? But thank you, Andrew, for all the work that you put into this and the other officers involved. Thank you so much. We'll move on now, members, to item 6, which is the SDF fund report and HCF Aonb fund. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to highlight as ever that we have these 2 funds available. The one is order of magnitude greater than the other, but the Sustainable Development Fund on the Welsh side and the Herefordshire Community Foundation Wye Valley Aonb Fund, which is applicable across the whole of the Aonb, but we tend to focus it more on the English side because we've already got the generosity of Welsh Government on the Welsh side. The assessment panel, the SDF assessment panel, has thought it had fully allocated the SDF this year, but then subsequently there's been a little bit of horse trading around the deliverability of some of those projects within the constraints of the financial year, and it looks like we may have an unallocated or an underspend of about 5,000 this year still, which is fine because we've still got 4 months or so of the year to go. So that's not a huge concern in itself. And we've already allocated some of next financial year, the SDF, and so we will do a little bit of the carry forward as well of that 5,000 under allocated this year. The granting from next year, we can't carry the funds over, unfortunately. We obviously await Welsh Government's announcement on the funds that we have got a Sustainable Development Fund next year, but we're certainly not anticipating any major cuts and hopefully no cut at all in that. The Herefordshire Community Foundation fund is much smaller, and we haven't made any, there haven't been any applications for it in the last few months. So that is sitting there, and as we've used most of the immediate impact fund, we're now turning to start using the interest of that. The longer it sits there, the bigger it gets, hopefully. So hopefully we will start to draw in contributions to it as well. So that will grow or stay at about the same amount depending on how fast we spend it. That's the status of things at the moment. I've given you a breakdown of the SDF projects in the table on page 31. As I said, that there will be some variation in that now. Some 2 or 3 of those projects won't make full spend this year, and we're quite happy to move that grant offer over into next year. But in principle, those are the approved projects, and seek your endorsement of those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. If there's no comments, we've been asked to recommend that the JAC endorses the recent allocations of the SDF fund for 21-22 and 22-23, subject to minor variations and funds being available. Are you all content with that recommendation? Thank you very much. Thank you, members. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the 50th anniversary programme, which is a bit, I'm afraid it's not what we had hoped for, but that's life. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, this is for information, and as Anne said, obviously we planned greater, more exciting things, but yeah, with the constraints of the COVID restrictions, we focused much more on social media campaign, which, if any of you have been following it, hopefully you've been enjoying the depth and breadth of people and activities and information that we've been presenting. Certainly the feedback we've been getting is very positive. People have been really enjoying and appreciating the spread of information. The two things that are we've got coming up is the looking at repeating the Aonb Perceptions survey, which we've repeated over the last, twice over every 5 years. So it seems timely to do that. And also as a sort of culmination of the festivities for the year, or celebrations for the year, we've been working on a major national conference on what is natural beauty, which will be on the 1st of December. And so I put the links in for that, and we're, yes, hopefully that'll be a successful and informative conference, which will sort of wrap up our year, and then we'll pick up with the perception survey and bring the results back to you at the next JAC. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. David, yes, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, I just wanted to talk to you about the Perceptions Questionnaire, which I think is an absolutely admirable thing to do, because it informs us as to what people think about the Aonb, hopefully specifically the people who live within it. And I just want to draw your attention to a paragraph you've written on page 34, which says the questionnaire will be distributed electronically via SurveyMonkey to individuals and organisations involved in the Aonb partnership or connected with various Aonb projects, which is great, but it is rather self-selecting, is it not? Surely what we really need to know is what people think of the Aonb who are not involved in the local partnerships, are not involved in the projects, in order to find out why they're not. I appreciate entirely that may be a far more challenging distribution list, but I do feel that you're self-selecting the good comments.
Thank you, David.
I mean, that's a. Sorry, shall I pick up comments at the end? Yes, see, there's 2 or 3.
Yes, I think Councillor McFarlane. Thank you, and then Councillor Edwards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Point well made by Councillor Wheeler. I wonder whether the Perceptions survey can also include questions on the 5-point pledge, which is right at the end of the management plan and is one of the most inspiring pieces of text that I've seen in the plan. And it, we know what the current situation is with COP26 ongoing, but it would be nice to see whether anybody has an opinion on whether they're meeting that 5-point pledge or whether they would like more information on how best to do so. It's just one of the, obviously, if you're going to do a survey as a form of qualitative monitoring, then you do need to ask the same questions. However, I think these days, with the circumstances changing so quickly, it might be worth expanding it to involve a few questions on the 5-point pledge. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rita Edwards would like to come in.
Thank you, Chair and Andrew. My comment was really to see what we could do to engage younger people, both in the survey and the conference. And I'm looking particularly up at sixth form colleges and schools. But in actual fact, I'm a governor at the Dell Primary School, and they do enormous amount on the natural state, wildlife, etc. Is that an avenue that could be explored as well, please?
Chris, you wanted to come back? And then we'll go on to Andrew. Thank you.
No, sorry, that was a legacy hand, but absolutely involving young people. That's the hardest thing all of our organisations face. As we age, we don't recruit from the next generation. I don't know why that is, but whatever we do, we have to do it for them, and they should take an interest, and they should be enabled to participate. But otherwise,
points well made. Thank you. Thank you, Rita, and thank you, Chris. Right, over to you, Andrew, please. Thank you.
Yes, no, really helpful. I really like that idea, Chris, of incorporating something on the 5-point pledge. So I'll certainly look at that. And you're right, we want to benchmark with previous questions as much as possible, but yeah, adding new questions isn't a problem. It's changing existing ones in a sense where you then get the statistical variance. And yes, so that old problem, how do you reach the hard to reach people? I mean, we will certainly put it out on Facebook and through social media, but those people are already engaged with us or engaging with us. So it's, again, we don't have the resources to put it out with, through the post or through, with local newspapers or something. And it, yes, it wasn't ever intended to be that sort of survey, but broadening the circulation of it is not a problem within the capacity and the resources that we have. But it would be lovely to do a much broader and statistically valid survey of the local population, but that's certainly not what I think we've got planned with this. And similarly, it's not a questionnaire that's targeted at children. We do a reasonable amount of work with the schools, and certainly we would be sending it to our youth rangers, both past and present, and and some of the teachers and people that we've worked with. But again, I don't think we will be engaging directly with school children through this initiative, but there certainly is work that we do with children, so we hope we get our messages across to them when we can.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered whether it would be possible, just as a suggestion, and you may well do it already, of course, simply sending the details to each parish council, asking not for a response from the parish council, but asking the clerks to then distribute them to all their parish councillors, because I don't know how many parish councils there are in the Aonb, but you're probably getting into a region of 300 parish councillors, probably far more, in itself. And of course, all the local shops down the valley. I mean, Red Book Shop well enough to know that anything you put in there will be immediately distributed throughout the village.
Thank you, David. Rita.
I'm sorry, just the full thing what David has just said. Most councils now have some kind of round robin or Facebook presence, and that goes out to the residents straight away.
Yes.
I think really, I'm quite passionate about trying to get this to children because, as you said, we're all getting older. And when an 8-year-old knows who Greta Thunberg is, and you talk about an area of outstanding natural beauty, and that's outside their concept, I realise that we on the ground, this is not directed at you, Andrew. This is we on the ground need to understand what framework we can use to present to the children who live in our communities, whether it's through school, football clubs, taekwondo, whatever. There's a huge diverse range, and children are talking, which is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. Points well made. Thank you very much. This paper was for this paper is for information, and if there are any other comments, please show now, but otherwise we'll move on to the next item.
Right, just
sorry, Ashley, I didn't.
To point out that Andrew's mentioned the rangers, and it might well be a useful thing in one of our future meetings for a brief illustration of the work of the young rangers. We have quite a lot of new members of the committee, and I think that it ought to be highlighted.
Thank you, Ashley. Rita, would you like to take your hand down unless you want to say anything else? Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which again is for information on the water quality update. Please, Andrew. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, this is I suppose I'd say a fairly dense report. I've tried following on from the presentation at the last meeting, and I had hoped that we'd have somebody from NRW, an Environment Agency, here today, and unfortunately for completely separate reasons, neither of the main representatives were able to attend today. So I've tried to update members on the situation in the Wye as much as possible, both across the whole catchment as well as in the Aonb, and update since the last meeting in July. And there was, I'm sure most people were aware of the heightened activity and promotion of the issues over the summer, with the Walking with the Wye event, Riverside programme or broadcasting, another algal bloom, and the build-up of citizen science initiatives, and then over the last few weeks or month or so, the last Wye Nutrient Management Board meeting and the announcement from Avara Foods and from DEFRA increasing some of their funding. And yes, and the Environment Agency has now launched its consultation on the 7 River Basin Management Plan, which includes the Wye. So I hope it demonstrates the depth and breadth of activity in the catchment, and you know, things are moving or starting to move in the right direction. Whether they're moving fast enough or whether there are enough resources to do what needs to be done remains to be seen, and still waiting for the trickle down from the budget last week as to what comes this way, as it were, for the catchment. But I don't want to deal in any more detail on this, but yeah, as I said, I've tried to give as much information as possible to update members. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, Councillor McFarlane.
Thank you, Andrew, and I respect your plea not go into detail on this. However, this is the second year that we've got algal blooms. The second year when the food chains and the wildlife, the ecosystems are the aquatic ecosystems are being compromised. And as a conservationist, an environmental conservationist, I'm always eager to put a sense of urgency into this. I mean, how many more years are we going to have little or no salmon? How many years are we going to have algal blooms continuing into the future? Because the money that we get is not enough to actually deal with the problem. What I would like to ask is, are we monitoring the interventions, let's say? Because I know that I can see some landowners and some farmers and some organizations are changing their ways and reducing the amount of fertilizer, the chicken manure that they're putting on the land, which leaches directly into the Y. Do we know how much of the catchment is being contacted, is changing its ways to reduce the harm that they provide, or is it down to the number of landowners? And I know that much of this is outside of the Aonb. It's in the north of the geography, but it would be nice to know, to have an idea as to how we quantify the reaction to what is the death or the dying of the Y. And I use my words particularly carefully, because I, like many others, am getting frequent emails and requests and letters saying that this is unbelievable, that we've lost the Y. I saw a poster the other day which said a sewer runs through it, as a joke on a film that came out a decade ago. It's, yeah, and also obviously as has come up recently is the amount of raw sewage discharge that is being put into the Y. I know that the county council, and I'm county councillor in Gloucestershire, have a task group which is looking at the restoration of our rivers, and they have invited the representatives of the 3 water companies that affect the Y to come in and answer questions, let's say. Only one of them has turned up. This is 6 months late. So only one of them has had the courage to do so. So I'm just it's a plea, really. I'm frightened for the future of our wildlife and our Aonb. If the River Y dies, then it really is a sad indictment of the way we've managed it or not managed it, or with the pressures that we face. It really is. I wouldn't like to continue if we didn't intervene more solidly, more powerfully, and effectively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, this is high on the agenda for so many agencies at the moment. I really don't expect you to answer too many questions, Andrew, because I just want to. We all understand the emergency about this, and we just look forward to these agencies reporting back to us, particularly the NRW. Thank you. Yolande, and then Colin, and then we'll bring this debate to a close on this item. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, I was just going to say, is it possible, and I don't know if it's within our boundaries, Chair, to actually write a letter? Because I do hear what Councillor McFarlane is saying, and I certainly have made my views quite clear to our local MP, Jesse Norman, and I actually asked several of my parishioners to write to him too, because they were incensed. They were writing me emails, but I actually got them to write to him, and then asked our local papers to ask Jesse Norman and Bill Wigan to explain why they abstained. But I think that the River Y runs right through my ward. It's an icon for local people, for tourists, for visitors, and in New Zealand, I would be putting forward legislation to make it a person, which has been done in New Zealand, to make it actually a living person, to actually give it the same rights as a human being, because if it was, old job was a nurse, and it would be on a life support machine, being having been poisoned with 15 years of legacy phosphates in its veins. I just ask, is it possible for us to write a letter to all the agencies and to all our county councils and all that are involved to actually say, we are watching, we are waiting to see what is doing, and we are keeping an eye on it. I think as a joint advisory committee, I think that we just let them know that we are watching them, and I hope actions follow words. Sorry, I can get my soapbox on this one as well. Thanks.
Sorry, Colin, I need to bring in Matthew Price. I do apologise, Matthew, from the NFU that I didn't draw you in earlier. And Colin, if you wouldn't mind just waiting a second while we bring Matthew in. Thank you, Matthew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to come on to this point, really to answer the previous question, because there was a question in there from Chris as to is this just individual landowners doing what they think is the right thing, or is there any sort of wider compulsion or enforcement going on? Just giving the peace of mind, there's a regulation that came in 2018, the reduction and prevention of agricultural diffuse pollution regulations that came in, which the EA hadn't really been doing a great deal about since 2018. And obviously with the concerns and issues with regard to the Y, there has been a serious ramping up on the part of the EA. So they've written to every single registered poultry holding, so every commercial poultry holding in the Y catchment, I believe on the English side. I'm not quite sure what Natural Resources Wales are doing, because it's not my department. Which again possibly illustrates part of the problem, in as much that the Y catchment goes into Wales as well. But just to give you the peace of mind there, there's actually an enormous headache in the agricultural sector at the moment, which is called adjusting to different uses of poultry manure within the scope of those regulations, which the EA are making very clear they will be enforcing. So there's only a limited crop type that can have an autumn application of poultry manure put on it. And anybody wanting to make applications outside of the scope that's been outlined by the EA have to apply to the EA to do so. It's a complex issue, and there's an awful lot going on with this. Agriculture, as Avara has already said, I think it's accepted that some of the phosphates that are ending up in the Y are agricultural in origin. I don't think anybody can deny that. And I think Avara's statement is a brave one. And I think it's fair to say that agriculture has to come to the table, which indeed it's doing. And I know there's an awful lot of good work being done on this at the moment, through the Nutrient Management Board, with NFU, local businesses, Avara, Noble Foods. This is very high on lots of agendas, but just to give you the peace of mind that enforcement that's been taking place by the EA, every single commercial poultry business has had a very clear and quite firmly worded letter from the EA making it clear that they will be enforcing those 2018 regulations. And there's a lot of work being done, and it's not going to be easy in terms of adjusting. And I think probably I would look to this committee as well. If, for example, an application came forward for a facility for an alternative use for this poultry manure, so for example a litter burner or some other means of getting this stuff put to an alternative use, I'd look for everybody's support towards that, obviously as long as it wasn't contrary to any other objectives of the Aonb. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that information, Matthew. Really interesting and good points made. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date on that. Can I bring in Colin Evers, please? Being patiently waiting there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I go along with a lot of what everybody else has been saying. Andrew mentioned fairly early on when he was talking about the fact that as of the 22nd of October, there is a consultation document which has been issued, which is a government consultation document, on the Severn River Basin Management Plan. Now, as part of the Severn Basin Management Plan, there is the Y. And I would suggest that from the JAC, a very strong response is made to that consultation, highlighting the situation on the Y, and also the other tributaries, which not necessarily we think of very much, which are in the Aonb. Within my own neck of the woods, the Forest of Dean, I can find there's a lot of sporting documentation that goes with this consultation, and having looked at it, I can find not a single tributary feeding into the Severn which has got a good classification across the range of parameters which they look at in this document. I'm particularly concerned, for instance, about the levels of mercury which are present, which I find time after time tributaries are failing on. Now, I know the mercury standard is very low, but nevertheless, it is low because it's so important. And having said that, what worries me, particularly about the Wye, is the fact that where I live, my water supply comes from the Wye. I know it goes through Micheldean, it's supposed to be cleaned up, but I assure you, how well are they actually cleaning it up when you think how well the water companies are doing with respect to sewage cleanup? So, it is a very, very worrying topic, this, and it needs a very, very firm grasp of the tiller to steer us out of the rapids.
Thank you, Colin. Can I bring in John now? Councillor John Hardwick, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to also add that there's an active group of Herefordshire farmers that are working with the Wye and Us Foundation with regards to the phosphates issue. It's already been stated that Herefordshire, I think, is got an excess of 2,000 tonnes of phosphates actually in the catchment, and there's quite a bit of land that just doesn't need any further applications of phosphate. Also, Avara are very active on this. Poultry manure is already being exported outside of Herefordshire, going over to the Cotswolds. Herefordshire Council Cabinet members are also engaging with Cabinet members from Powys. So there's a great deal of work currently going on to actually try and sort this issue out. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Can I bring in Chris McFarlane, please? McFarlane, thank you.
Sorry, that was a legacy hand.
Oh, right. Okay, then. Thank you for that. Rita.
Can I just ask a question about this cross-border contact and communication? We've had a very good report from the NFU on the English side of the Wye, but there must be a contact in the NFU for the Welsh side as well. We could hear from, along with the NRW, the appropriate NRW consultant. And it seems a pity, really, to come to a meeting like this and have, okay, there are more poultry farms on the Herefordshire side, etc. But it would be good to have this cross-border report in future, please. Thank you.
Yes, normally David Price attends, but he's obviously unavailable today. But he would normally be here. Rita, sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
Matthew Lewis, please, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to go back to Councillor McFarlane's question about monitoring. So beyond the enforcement that has already been referred to around poultry manure, there is an answer, I think, in the draft of the the River Wye Action Plan, the joint document that is being prepared by Natural England and NRW and Environment Agency. I'm not sure it's a hugely reassuring answer, but it actually says, so this is about the voluntary actions over and above environmental standards. It says, monitoring the level of uptake of advice given by and in the various bodies needs to be undertaken to understand the effect the voluntary approach is having within the catchment. So that suggests to me that the answer to your original question is nobody knows.
Thank you, Matthew. Chris, is that an old hand?
No, it's not. It's following on from a couple of comments just heard. First of all, I'm rather frustrated that nobody from Natural England or NRW is here at this meeting. Just the NFU rep who's just given his comments was incredibly valuable, and I mean we only meet 3 times a year, and this must be one of the topics that's high on their agendas. You know, the least they can do is prepare in advance to send a representative. And the other thing, you're quite right that we do need to monitor both the degradation of the River Wye, but also the value of the interventions to see what works and what doesn't work. The Seven River Partnership, which I'm also a member of, are promoting voluntary citizen scientists to actually do quite that and to actually check the quality of the water in the water courses near them. And that's I don't know whether that's going to overlap into the Wye, but the other and I would suggest that since most of them are volunteers, the cost of a coordinator wouldn't be that much, just to make sure that you get, you know, you lever in more effort and more data than you put in financially. And I know that's happening to a certain degree, but we could do with more of that. And finally, although in the lower Wye, which is in my ward and division, we find that the dilution effect of the volume of the water and also by the tide renders any significant calculations of phosphate or sewage integration meaningless. However, as we know around the world, that there are estuaries which are classified as dead zones, where animals and fish, you know, aquatic fish and mammals cannot survive because of the loading of fertilizers which have leached through all the watercourses and the rivers, the fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, you know, all the contaminants, and that is a worry. And I don't know whether we monitor the estuary and as a basin for its loading of these, but it would be a very sad story if in you know, by not saving the Wye, we don't save the estuary either. But thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Barron, please, Wye Valley Society.
Yeah, just a quick update for Chris McFarlane. There was that, yes, it is being monitored up and down the Wye. I know that because my wife is doing it. There's about 70 or 80 people, I think, currently monitoring the Wye and reporting back.
Look, there's thank you for that. There's so many people involved in this and so much passion. I can feel today, I can feel it here, even though I'm not in the room and I can't really see you all. I can feel the passion that we have for our river, and I thank you for the debate. Even though this was for information, it's amazing, all the comments and all the work that's being done in connection with making sure that our River Wye survives in the state that it was, say, I don't know, 20 years ago, Andrew, perhaps. Thank you. Yeah. I don't really expect you to comment, Andrew. There's a lot you've taken on board, and I think Richard is writing away madly with all the comments that we've all made, and so I think that this is going to be an item on our agenda for some while yet. Thank you. Yeah. If we can move on then, thank you very much for all your comments. If we can move on then to item 9, which is the Wye Valley Villages Travel and Transport Plan update. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, again, this is for information to really bring members up to speed with. We've reported a number of times on this as a sort of a project in progress. We reached a sort of milestone in September or the end of the summer with public consultation period on the stage 2 report, which is the report prepared by Arup on the initial proposals and ideas and sort of strategic vision for the area, which is focused on the Monmouthshire part of the Aonb and the towns or the villages in St Arvan's, Devorden, Tintern and Trellick United areas. There are a number of initial sort of evaluations coming out, or points coming out of the evaluation and that public consultation, and I've put in under the implications on page 40 kind of bullet points of some of the key messages that are coming out so far. There's a meeting tomorrow, I think, where the Arup feedback on this in greater detail. Unfortunately, I've got to attend a funeral tomorrow, but I know Matthew and others will be there, and then Arup will be preparing the stage 3 report, which will draw up the conclusions from the consultation and start to firm up the proposals, costed proposals going forward, with a range of short, medium and long-term interventions. We have got some money put aside from the Sustainable Landscapes, Sustainable Places funding for some quick wins this year, and depending on what the proposals are, again, we would hope if we've got similar SLSP funding next year that we may be able to put some further proposals in. So, but I'm not saying we'll be able to deliver everything in the plan, but there's some prospects there. But yeah, so that's the sort of quick roundup of where we are. And as I said, it's for information, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any comments? Thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to move on then to the next item. Sorry.
Yes. Hello. Yes. Dave
sorry,
Wheeler.
Councillor Dave Wheeler had some.
Sorry, David. Sorry.
Sorry, I do apologise. Do stop me. This is my soapbox issue. Great, fantastic. Monmouthshire villages all linked together in a lovely road, lovely transport. Bang! It comes off over Bigsby Bridge and comes into Gloucestershire. What can I say? Connection between Gloucester highways and Monmouthshire highways nil. Neither side knows what the other one's doing at any point. So you do need to involve Newland Parish Council and probably St Breville's Parish Council and probably Hillsfield Parish Council in this. The parish councils up and down the lower Y do try to get in touch with each other. We've had quite a new Oxford English Dictionary phrase during this meeting called legacy hands. I'd like to use a new one: legacy diversion signs. If you wanted to really affect transport in the lower Wye Valley, introduce the idea of legacy diversion signs to both Monmouthshire and Gloucestershire highways. It's an absolute nightmare. There was one occasion about 2 months ago, at Wysham, where if you came across the Wye Bridge, you were faced with 3 diversion signs. One said, diverted traffic, go straight on up the A4136 towards Colford. Second one said, diverted traffic, please turn right onto the A466 towards Chepstow. And the third sign said, diverted traffic, please go round the mini roundabout all the way round and go back onto the A40. There was no indication of which sign was relevant to which diversion or which road closure. It's absolutely impossible. The police view is when there is a road closure, motorists need to do what they can. The highways version is that we can only divert traffic onto roads which are of the same standard as the road which is closed, which means that in one occasion in Gloucestershire recently we had a half-a-mile closure which resulted in a 45-mile diversion, and of course everybody ignored it, with the result that some of the villages, especially on the, as I say, the top of the valley, shaped Clearwell, St Breville's, etc., can get absolutely overwhelmed by road closure signs, road closure diversions. We really do need to tell Monmouthshire and Gloucestershire they need to coordinate what they're doing and get their signage correct. Just saying road closed ahead is of no use whatsoever when you're talking about a 15-mile stretch of road. So if I can see road closed ahead, and I don't know whether it's in at Bigswear and on which side of Bigswear Bridge or at Tinton, I'm going to carry on to find out where it's closed. It's natural because I actually want to go to St Breville, so I'm going to go to Bigswear and turn left. So a road closure at Tinton is of no importance to me whatsoever. Obviously, I generally know, but other people don't, and it causes total chaos. Apart from you're trying to develop a public transport network, and the buses, I don't know what the buses do. I've never known what the buses do along the Wye Valley, because you close the road and they go everywhere. Sorry, rant over.
That's good, David. Whatever happened to those meetings that we had when we with all the town and community councils along the valley? It was brilliant, and I wish we could reinstate that.
Well, indeed. I mean, I do have to say there is a residual meeting of those, because I know that our clerk gets in touch with some of the parish councils when we hear of total chaos somewhere.
Please keep in touch with us this side of the river, please. Thank you very much, David. They were really good. Really worthwhile. Thank you. Rita.
I'm joining David Wheeler's soapbox. That's enough said. We will be in touch, David. Lion roundabout to Wysham will be ours. Thank you.
Right.
Anyone else wish to speak on this subject? If not, oh yes, Chris. Sorry, Chris McFarlane. Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Come in.
Yeah, there must be an economic benefit from having a good public transport system, so that tourists can get around and visit all the hotspots that they want, spending money as they go. It must be actually, on balance, better financially for us to have a mini public transport system in the Wye Valley that works and operates frequently and affordably. That's it. Soapbox over.
Thank you, Chris. Point taken. Definitely. Thank you very much for that. Yes. Okay. Plenty of good stuff going on here. Let's move on to item 10A, the National Association report back. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yeah, again, for information, just to update briefly on the work of the National Association for Aonbs. And we did have the conference online just after the last JAC. Also had the John Watkins taken over as the new chief exec of the National Association, and we've had the lead officers meeting looking at the forthcoming Glover review, or the government's response to the Glover review, which, as I said, is due later this year. There's the global statement, a draft of which I attached. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get hold of the finalised version when I put the papers together. I haven't actually seen the finalised version, but I assume that has been submitted. Yes, and then there's the AGM, as previously mentioned, in a couple of weeks' time, which I will be attending on behalf of the chair and vice chair, who both sent their apologies. So don't want to, happy to answer any questions, but you've obviously got the paper there if anyone wants to catch up in more detail.
I think Rita has still got her hand up, but she's disappeared for a moment.
Yeah, that really is a legacy hand, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, legacy.
Legacy hand, thank you. Okay, thank you, Andrew, and all the best for the meeting, which we'll be attending the week after next. Thank you. The item 11 we move on to, which is the Aonb progress report. Thank you.
Yeah, again, don't want to go into any significant detail in this, but yeah, farming and protected landscapes. We have this funding. We've made the first allocation. We have the first panel meeting this week, but yeah, we're looking forward to this new fund having an impact both in the Aonb, and we've identified we could be allocating a proportionate amount to it further upstream, where that will have definite benefits on the water quality coming downstream as well. The SLSP, as I said, is being focused primarily on the Aonb office decarbonisation, which is almost complete. So at some stage, I will look forward to welcoming you all to the, maybe not all at once, but welcoming you to the new Aonb office in due course, and various other bits of work being undertaken. And then item C, the Lower Wye Nature Networks project, we've just had that approved, so that'll be a major project over the next 18 months, or just under 18 months, on the Welsh side, joining up landscapes and protected areas, and lots of good work on involving in controlling invasive non-natives and other things. Yeah, so like I said, happy to answer questions on any detail either now or at any other time. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McFarlane, would you like to come in?
Yeah, it was literally about the previous item which we missed, 10.1A. We seem to have jumped over that one, and I was going to comment on that one.
Andrew, we did mention it, I think, didn't we?
Yes, as I say, I wasn't able to get hold of the final version, but yeah, I thought it worth being aware of the the global context of our work, and working with other protected landscapes across the globe.
Did you by any chance get, or do you know if a response was made to that that letter?
I don't know. I'm afraid. I will certainly find out and let you know.
Thank you. Just I'd like to make a comment about the Cledden Falls work. That must have been quite precarious in stages, I imagine. When will this work be actually completed, Andrew? And I think thanks must go to the landowners here as well for their cooperation.
Yes, we're just finalising the signage. Hopefully get that sorted in the next couple of weeks, and then we can take the fencing down. We will be organising an official opening at some point, and I would recommend every able-bodied person to go and walk that route when it's open. The handrail is a real work of art. It's a really bespoke piece of ironwork, and the blacksmith said it was the most challenging job he's ever taken on, which I think was, aside from carrying it all down there, it's beautiful. It really is, worth seeing. And the steps, the work Ibex did on steps, it's really, it will completely reinvigorate that walk around the Cledden Chutes, which of course will be very impressive at the moment with all the rain as well.
Yeah, as we all are, we're all so busy, but we must take time out to look at that, I'm sure.
Well, again, when we hold the JAC tour again, that we'll try and visit that.
Yeah. Did you have your hand up, David? I'm not sure. Somebody did, and I've missed it. Perhaps.
Yolanda.
Okay. Yolanda, yes, that's right, Yolanda.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a photo of the handrail for those of us who haven't been able to get down there? I have walked the walk previously, but it'd be really great to. Is that on the website or on
it's
the
not
office?
On the website. I can't remember whether we put something on Facebook, but
okay.
It's we will. I mean, we haven't promoted it too heavily yet because the route's still closed. So as soon as we open it,
that'd be great. Yeah,
yes.
thanks, Andrew. That's marvellous. Chair, I've just also got a question under any other business, but I will wait till then. Okay.
Okay, you can go ahead, Yolanda, and ask. Oh, so David first. Sorry, David.
Sorry, it is on that report. Andrew, I'm sorry I should have asked you this before outside the meeting, but the work on the Wysham part of the Wye Valley Walk, how far does that work extend southwards?
It's from it's a 400 meters, 600 meters from the Beaufort Bridge down to just by the sewage works, or sort of from the Monmouthshire, the top end of the Monmouthshire Showground up to the Beaufort Bridge.
It doesn't extend down past the showground onto the knobbly bit by the halfway.
No.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
That's for another day, David.
Indeed.
Yes, when it gets critical, we'll deal with it.
Okay. Yeah. Yolanda, come in, please.
Thank you. And please forgive me, Chair, because I am going to be quite cheeky. I'm doing some work at the moment on watercourse consent forms and looking at the one in Herefordshire Council. And as we've been talking about the River Wye and the tributaries, I'm just wondering if colleagues who are in the Forest of Dean and in Monmouthshire would be able to share their watercourse consent forms with me, please, or give me a name where I can actually obtain them from. I've not been able to find them through the various websites. It's usually with the drainage teams, but any contacts would be grateful. And I really am sorry, Chair, for being so cheeky. But yeah.
That's okay.
Yolanda, I volunteer Chris McFarlane as the person who will be able to do that. He says quickly.
We're going to close the meeting soon. The next meeting is in March. And as has been rightly said, there's a huge amount of really interesting stuff that we've been talking about today, really important items. And I'm just wondering, Richard, if it's, I don't want to put you on the, Richard, who's been taking all our notes today, if it's possible to circulate the minutes a little bit earlier in draft so that we can all be reminded of what we've talked about today, because by the time March comes along, we'll have all been doing lots more. So I don't know, Richard, if you can come in there, if it is possible for you to issue the minutes, not tomorrow, but a little bit quite early, in order that we can all be reminded.
I can get the minutes. I can aim to get the minutes onto the website within the next few days, if that's helpful. But I would remind you that the meeting itself is being recorded and will be on the Monmouthshire website if anyone needs to look back in the next day or so.
Okay, but both methods would be really good to have at hand. Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard, and thank you for being here today. Thank you, Matthew, our other officer who's been here from Monmouthshire. Thank you for all the members that have contributed today. David, yes, come on.
I just wondered, Andrew, whether there's any news of a Wye Valley tour, or whether you're intending to do one or possibly two next year, because we didn't have one this year.
So I've got a window opposite me shining straight in my face. At the moment, I'm contemplating possibly in sort of maybe February time of doing a sort of an online talk presentation or something. I'm not quite sure what yet, but yes, so doing a deep midwinter probably online event, but may end up being in a village hall or something. I don't know, but some kind of meeting or presentation in deep midwinter to make up for lack of tour this year. Then yeah, we'll see as next year unfolds whether we have a sort of May or April May tour as well. I haven't quite thought about that. I'm certainly looking forward to a proper tour in September, but yes, so you can look forward to something in deep midwinter, and hopefully, yes, a proper tour again in next year.
Thank you. And the conferences that you're attending, Andrew, if there's anything really that we should know about that's really important to us and the subjects we've been discussing, perhaps you could report to us as well on those. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, certainly.
Right. And if there's anything else anybody wishes to raise?
I feel
yes, Rita.
I feel a Christmas carol coming on after Andrew's comments about the deep midwinter. So I'm just going to say, when we do finish, Happy Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got to start somewhere.
Haven't even got my copy on yet. Yes.
The meeting's been really interesting, and Anthony, I hope that you've enjoyed the experience and that you'll come again, and anybody else that is likely to join us next time as a visitor. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye.
So
Thank you.
brilliantly.
Bye.
Bye.